Welcome to Series 3 about St. Thomas Aquinas and his proposals about the good life. It's Paul Medeiros. I'm in city of New Bedford today near my residence, and Series 3.1 is intended to introduce you to Aquinas. To begin, I'd like to read for you the mission of Salve Regina University. This is the first sentence of the mission. As a community that welcomes people of all beliefs, Salve Regina University, a Catholic institution founded by the Sisters of Mercy, seeks wisdom and promotes universal justice. We've taken some steps towards pursuing this mission so far this semester. Socrates in the Apology, Aristotle, and this week Aquinas. Our first three authors will be talking about what wisdom is and the importance of seeking wisdom. Philosophy 225 also has a mission. We are a core curriculum class, and our mission is to have a dialogue with the Catholic intellectual tradition, and in particular on the topic of faith and reason. This week we're going to take a step toward fulfilling that mission with St. Thomas Aquinas, an important authority in the Catholic intellectual tradition. I'd like to introduce to you now St. Thomas Aquinas. There's a really good and short biography in our biographies reader. It's titled 3 Homilies, and there's some interesting statements there also about human life. We know that St. Thomas Aquinas, at about the age of 19, college age, decided he wanted to join a new order of the Catholic Church, the Dominicans. And we know that his mother in particular did not want him to join the Dominicans. He was at school and his mother had him apprehended and brought home to their home in Italy, and he spent a year in confinement. I hope this doesn't happen to any of you here at Salve Regina. He reports that he spent his year in confinement reading the Bible from front to back, and by the end of the year his family gave him permission to pursue his dream to join the Dominicans, and he lived life committed to book learning and scholarship and participation in universities. As a Dominican, one of his jobs was to help start libraries in different parts of Europe, in Germany and in Italy. And he was also a member of the famous university in Paris, where he participated in disputations. His most famous work is the Summa Theologiae, which I translate as the complete theology or the whole theology. It is a 7,000-page document exploring all manner of questions about creation, about the nature of God, about human life, about the church and sacraments of the church. And the Summa Theologiae is a collection of disputations. A disputation is a form of university debate in which ideas are explored and authorities invoked to answer important questions. Importantly, St. Thomas Aquinas is a theologian and not a philosopher. For St. Thomas Aquinas, theology is the science of sacred things, and for him, philosophy supports theology. For St. Thomas Aquinas, philosophy is about reasoning and giving arguments, and he thinks that philosophy is an important tool for theology. St. Thomas Aquinas was a part of a movement in the 1100s and in his own time in the 1200s, the 13th century, to study ancient thought, in particular Aristotle. This movement is known as scholasticism. Scholasticism is the harmonization of ancient philosophy, Plato and Aristotle, with Catholic faith. If you read the biography on Aristotle, you'll learn that Aristotle, near the time of his death, had fallen into bad repute in Athens, in part because of his affiliation with Macedonia. After Aristotle's death, his works were forgotten, his thoughts were forgotten, and he was in bad repute. The thought of Aristotle was kept by some persons, in particular the Muslim world, collected Aristotle's writings, kept these in libraries, and it took over 1,000 years for the thought of Aristotle to reemerge in Europe. St. Thomas Aquinas is a part of a generation that began to study Aristotle and translate Aristotle into Latin, and they felt that Aristotle had some really good insights and ideas which they felt was or are compatible with Roman Catholic faith. Some more points about the Summa Theologicae. Folio C shows extracts of disputations from the Summa Theologicae, and the reading is perhaps among our more difficult readings this semester. I've made the disputations sort of brief and to the point so that you won't be distracted and confused. My advice for reading Socrates and the Apology and Aristotle is also true here. It's good to portion out your reading and try to avoid doing all of the reading at once. So read one or two disputations. Look first at the question of the disputation. For example, can we be happy in this life? And then look next at the authoritative answer. In our disputations, this is stated as on the contrary, and when our author writes on the contrary, he's going to now give us what does our authority say on this question. No, we cannot be happy in this life, or can't be perfectly happy in this life. And then the next step in the disputation is the I answer that. The I answer that is our author, St. Thomas Aquinas, explaining the authoritative answer and perhaps teaching us some vocabulary and providing some arguments to explain the authoritative answer. So when you read the disputations, pace out your reading and portion out your reading. Like our other work this semester, I'm going to give you learning objectives, things to look for and study for as you're doing your reading. So let's now look at our 3 learning objectives for Folio C. First, we ought to summarize the insights of St. Thomas Aquinas about the good life, which he shares with Aristotle. And we also want to note one difference, and that is Aquinas' idea of perfect happiness. Second learning objective, we want to learn the definition of 3 theological virtues: faith, hope, and charity. For St. Thomas Aquinas and many of our authors, theological virtues are important habits for the good life. And finally, our Philosophy 225 mission as a core curriculum class, we want to learn or understand the proposal of St. Thomas Aquinas about the compatibility of faith and reason. This will be called compatibilism. One last advice about your reading in Folio C. You may come upon a disputation that you don't understand some of the ideas or the words, and you become stuck. Um, if that happens, it's perfectly reasonable to turn the page and start at the next disputation. Tell yourself, at some future occasion, I may come to study St. Thomas Aquinas again, or perhaps I'll ask about this in our in-person Thursday discussions and ask for some clarification. But it's perfectly reasonable, rather than get stuck and frustrated, to turn the page and start at the top of the next page or the top of the next paragraph and begin from there. I think that's a nice brief introduction to Aquinas. I hope you enjoy your study. I'll see you in series 3.2.